The MAGA movement is committing suicide in front of our very eyes because of, and if you extrapolate that, that means there, and we see it in the numbers, we see it in the data, millions of people that have said we are no longer going to vote.
So Charlie Kirk is, for once, identifying an actual problem. There are many Republicans. Look, generally there are a lot of Americans who don't want to vote, but specifically the problem for Republicans is that they did not turn out to vote in this week's runoff election. Now let's see how good he is at actually diagnosing why that's happening, what needs to be done to fix it. Let's jump into a bit more.
I do sympathize with being upset with the Republican Party and not totally trusting the system, but not participating at all guarantees the other side to be able to play games. And if everything was broken and lost, how did we win the House of Representatives? If everything is broken and lost, how did Ron Johnson, who stood up against the pharmaceutical company, win in Wisconsin? If everything was broken and lost, how did Ron DeSantis win by 17 votes? How did we win the House by getting wins in California and New York?
Okay, so I definitely have thoughts about a couple different parts of that, but Jessica, I'll give you first crack. What do you think about the argument he's making there?
You know, it's ridiculous the way he's talking about the Republican Party as if they are the same team as the typical Donald Trump voter. There's a lot of disaffected working class people that saw Donald Trump as a disruptor, and they voted for him in 2016. A lot of people that were not participating in politics. And of course, when they see that when you elect someone, they end up not governing for you or making good on their campaign promises of draining the swamp and actually shaking up American politics, of course, they're gonna go back to being disaffected and not wanting to participate in the political process. The typical American voter is apathetic. They don't love either party. They don't see that party as their team. So the way he has this "we won the House" is not something that's going to motivate these voters to participating again. If you want a base of voters to cast ballots for you, you need to fight for policies that are popular among the typical American voter, which is a working class person who's economically struggling. That's why we see the message of economic populism winning and people like John Fetterman winning in really tough states.
Yeah, and also there's so much that he's missing there. I mean, why is it that you, to his question, why did we win the House? But clearly they can't win in the Senate. Well, to win these Senate races, you have to convince more people to vote for you. To win the House, in theory, that would be good. But it turns out you can also do some shady redistricting. You could effectively win it just purely based off of that if you want to. You don't have to win over any additional voters. And so they definitely did that. Now, to his more general point about, like, you can be frustrated with the party or politicians or the government generally, but you still have to participate. That is definitely a good point. But I would ask Charlie Kirk, who convinced them not to participate? Who convinced them that this entire thing was a scam and a fraud? Like, it's inconvenient for you now for everyone to think that their vote won't count. Do we want to go back and see what he had to say about 2,000 mules over the past year or so? Or the big lie? Stop the steal. Remember, Charlie Kirk was busing people to the Capitol before the riot, okay? He didn't participate or whatever, supposedly, but he was not allowing the actual way that things are supposed to run to continue. He told them, don't trust the election. And what do you know? Some of them don't trust the election. But honestly, I don't think he's individually the most responsible for this, but he also doesn't seem willing to identify the person who's individually most responsible, which continues to be Donald Trump. Now, he's not the only one. They're all preaching that the whole thing is rigged and it's a scam and you shouldn't trust any of it. You shouldn't early vote. You shouldn't mail in vote, although they seem to be moving on that. But Donald Trump individually is the person most pushing that. And if they want their base to change, they can't just say like, hey, you gotta vote. They have to fight the person who's actively encouraging people to check out of the system. Jessica.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. That's the other layer to this, is that this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you tell people there was election fraud, the election was rigged, why on earth would they be motivated to go cast a ballot again if our elections are invalid and they're rigged and there's fraud? I mean, it's so obvious they're not thinking any steps ahead at all. They're doing whatever they can to win in the present moment, which is how they operate. And they have some long-term strategies, but the Republicans fundamentally are a party, and they have been for quite some time, that will center any issue that will get them votes while they actually govern on behalf of corporations. So we saw under Nixon, it became abortion. They could get socially conservative voters to then vote for them. Under Donald Trump, they were like, well, if we just put this guy in front of people and as the head of the party, we'll keep getting those votes. We can win the presidency. And what are we going to do? We're going to pass tax breaks for corporations and the ultra wealthy while he's in office. But the consequence is now you're relying on this base of voters that are motivated by a guy who's just lying constantly. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, 100%. And so that I think is definitely a long-term problem. I mean, look, I don't think Republican voters are affected nearly enough by how little any of their elected officials seem to care about their lives. Like, I feel like it should be abundantly clear, indisputable that these people don't care about you and you should get rid of all of them. That isn't the case, but I do believe, as you're laying out, that they are, I think, like through osmosis, they've got to be getting a little bit of that nothing's being done. And then on top of that, though, one thing that it's possible Charlie Kirk in the full show goes into it. I'm not like most people. I have no interest in sitting down and listening to him talk for an hour. Is it possible that Herschel Walker was a terrible candidate? Is maybe that a part of it? Maybe it isn't just a generalized distrust of the system or voting, although that is a problem. I mean, after all, you will note they were able to overcome that to get Brian Kemp elected. And all of the other statewide races went to the Republicans. So we've identified a variable, actually. Like, you're implying it's a constant. It's apparently not enough for them to lose in all these other cases, but it was enough for Herschel Walker to twice be beat by Raphael Warnock. So maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe you should have someone, like maybe your efforts to apologize for and poo-poo the scandal allegations and all of his lies and all of his clear inadequacies and issues and all of that, maybe that was a bad call. Maybe you should have had a better candidate. Maybe virtually any other Republican would have easily walked away with this thing. So there's a lot of things to blame. And he is at least sort of trying to engage with the idea that there should be growth. But he's also, I think, like partly due to ignorance and partially intentionally because he doesn't want to identify that Trump is a problem. He is missing so many of the issues that they need to fix. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, just that this is American politics. We have on one side people like Charlie Kirk saying, if you don't vote for your lawmakers, people who hate you will vote people in. And then you have people like Nancy Pelosi saying, give us $5, vote blue, or else they're going to keep taking your rights away. Instead of them just fighting for our rights when they had the majority and getting something done, or at least trying, even if they don't think they can get every vote they need to pass legislation that would protect the right to abortion on a federal level. I mean, seriously, it's both sides saying the other side hates you and we don't hate you. Instead of them actually exemplifying what they're going to do and governing in a way that benefits everyday people. It's just the mess of American politics today.
Exactly. Yeah, they'll try to sort of secondhand imply that they care. They talked about inflation or gas prices, but again, they're not focusing on what is actually going to be done to fix those problems.